Before I get into the video, I just have to say, Sarah Beth is probably going to murder Kylan after this show is over. I mean, right now it's about 2 in the morning, Big Brother time, and he's still up with this chick, talking to her, doing their routine cuddles where he mostly initiates it. And I'm like, when she get out the house and finds out that Kylan was never her true ally, and the reason why being that she is white, I mean, I don't know how she's going to take it. I mean, because, the rest of them, people like Claire, people like Christian outside of the house, they're going to pretend like it's not a big deal. That it's okay. You know, they're children. They're allowed to be racist. They don't know what they do. Because that's essentially what the treatment is for you dumbass bastards who think you're getting away with something to celebrate. But someone like SB, who is already professing to Kylan during their talks about how he hurt her feelings in week 2 over something that was very small, very insignificant. Imagine how hurt her feelings will be once she realized all of that close talking and cuddling up shit was just a way to manipulate her so they could do a racially motivated attack against her to get her out the house. And how he listened to Tiffany and Azza and Hannah and them talk about how much they wanted her out the house and didn't inform her, didn't even give her a hint. And she poured all of her trust into him. Like, this is some insidious shit that you woke bastards are celebrating. That podcasters like Rob Has a Podcast and other BB podcasters are blatantly ignoring. But of course, the fucktwads on Twitter justifying all of this, rationalizing all of this by pointing to season 15, of course. You have people on Twitter right now mentioning season 15 and season 21. Now, with season 15, of course, we know they mention the routine people, but they always conveniently forget how Amanda tried to Me Too Howard during that season. I mean, I remember because it was my first season of feeds that I watched. And they were in the kitchen. Howard came up behind her and like said something that you didn't hear. And then after that, she like took a gasp and went around the house saying how Howard basically sexually accosted her. And basically, it was a way to target him, and females in that house have done that several times. Basically, try to play the Me Too shit to get a guy targeted. I mean, Natalie was known for doing that shit during 18. She did it to Paulie, and then she tried it with Paul. And I just hate when bitches play like that. But Amanda did that type of bullshit that gets dudes shot, that gets dudes arrested. So that was a despicable season. But mainly, they highlighted the Jean Marie and Aaron and talk about the racism and basically justifying racism with racism. But last time I checked, Aaron got called out for being a racist, right? By Julie Chen. She suffered some immediate consequences. So if you want to make that stupid ass comparison, then you have to acknowledge the fact that Aaron, at the time, suffered immediate consequences. GM suffered some consequences as well. But these people are being celebrated by Julie Chen and other podcasters and fans. They're not being called out the way Aaron and GM are being called out. So that's a stupid ass comparison, you dumbasses. Because if it was a fair comparison, then these people should be getting called out the way GM and them got called out. And now we get a warning every time the feeds come up about how they don't endorse, blah, blah, blah of what's going in the house. Like, that's real consequence. Right now, this bullshit is being celebrated by alumni, by BB podcasters, and woke BB fans. And then they point to season 21. Again, people were calling out the Jacks for their little comments. I mean, you go on the website, I don't know if it's still true now, but you go on the website, for a while, they didn't even have Mickey's name up there as a listed winner. So again, these dumbasses make these comparisons and they don't follow the comparison all the way through, because if they did, they would have to acknowledge, well, they actually suffered some consequences. They actually got called out by the show. Meanwhile, the cookout is allowed to be blatantly racist. And it has to do with the lowered expectations, the bigotry of lowered expectations, which is happening in this game. Hell, and it's even happening in real life. And we got, black liberal females getting accepted into law school with a low LSAT and low GPA with a full tuition scholarship. Because you have institutions of education basically not allowing, or you don't have to adhere to any sort of standard if you're a so-called POC to get into school. So you have potentially real life lawyers running around like Tiffany, who can't do math and who have low reading and comprehension skills. Like, that's going on in the Big Brother game of life. You also had this Philadelphia police chief called Danielle Outlaw, who's the police chief of Philadelphia, and she just came from Portland where she did a shit job. But instead of acknowledging how shitty she is at her job, I mean, she even praised single motherhood, even though we know what that leads to in certain communities. But now she's the police chief in Philadelphia, and Philadelphia has an uptick in crime. So you have this cookout mentality going on inside and outside of the house. We're talking about real life consequences. But, you got fucking idiot white liberal females on Twitter, because they are the worst, the white liberal females. But yeah, they're posting these tweets defending all of this racist bullshit. Meanwhile, they're not living in the neighborhoods that has to deal with the brunt of the consequences of these lowered expectations, which is why I once again celebrate that the hood, the crime of the hood is reaching their neighborhoods now. For instance, in my area, they're in the good parts of my area, they're robbing people and driving them to ATMs and making them withdraw money. And the police aren't doing anything about it, because I live in one of the areas where they had major BLM protest riots. And so they're not doing shit about it. So the same mentality that is being perpetuated in the Big Brother game of life is being perpetuated in that fucking house. And it's fucking sick. It's ruining real life, and it's ruining this game. Because you still, despite them making it to the final 8, you still have these bastards not even trying to play the game. They're up here going back and forth about who can win HOH and who can put up who. Like, how do you like this shit? For all the people who like to complain about the game being delayed. Oh, it's such a slow roll in the beginning of the season before jury. I mean, these fools are going into final 8 and trying to get to this racist 6, but they're still not even playing the game. Talking about who can and who can't win HOH. And they've been, celebrating, by the way, making it to the final 8. They finally made it official with them gathering in the bathroom, putting their hands in. And, you already have the females plotting against the dudes, They're making deals with Alyssa, trying to get Alyssa to put up two of the guys from the cookout because, again, that hierarchy, that hierarchy that those morons just ignore. I mean, the only one that's not really ignoring it fully is Derek F. Imagine that. I mean, Xavier is the biggest fucking simp in the house. Praise be to Devon. And she out here cooking his ass on Twitter while he's kissing her ass in the house. Imagine that. And he hangs on the every word of Devon 2.0 Tiffany in that house. But again, like they're saying just a bunch of racist shit in various conversations. I mean, follow Big Brother Daily, follow Joker's updates. They're guaranteed to pretty much transcribe most of the conversations where they're talking just all types of racist shit. Like, for instance, you have one tweet where Xavier is speaking to Derek. He says, I think if both of them, Alyssa and Claire, go up, they will key onto the cookout. I don't really give a fuck at that point. But if we put both of them up, they will realize they're the only two non-black people. They really believe these people aren't aware of this racist shit. Well, I mean, Alyssa got told, before the jury even started by Christian Birkenberger, who's now pretending like he never said anything about it. But she got told, and she seems to be going along with it because she's talking about targeting Claire next. Like, such a stupid bitch. And she allegedly owns a business? Sure. And Claire, again, she's aware of it as well, but she played like a complete dumbass. She didn't have to tell anybody about her being the secret HOH, and she could have did work and guarantee got one of them out. But again, she's worried about being called a racist outside the house. And I remember people hyping her up when she replaced the bald-headed chick who got, took out for, the fake virus reasons because, found out she didn't really have anything. But they were all hyping her up. Oh, she's a real super fan. She plays mini games, Survivor Michigan. Oh, she's going to be a beast. And here she is kowtowing to all this bullshit that she's fully aware of. But clearly Xavier, who's the lawyer, doesn't think anyone is aware of this shit. And then, you have Xavier talking to himself, about Alyssa not knowing her place. I mean, she mentioned something that he thought was a bad move. But again, it's just all race-based bullshit. Which again is why I made a video about this being the most racist season, because that's what this is. But you have people still desperate trying to prove otherwise, because they even referenced last season and referenced Enzo and Cody's relationship, saying because they mentioned the fact that there are two Italians from New Jersey, that is the equivalent of the cookout forming a six based around non-natural allies, saying we're forming with the intent and purpose to get all of the non-black people out of the house. That's clearly what Cody and Enzo were saying in their DRs. But again, this is what you get with fuck woke tards. Because the fact of the matter is, they will justify it. They will justify any kinds of bullshit. Which is why in real life, you need to gatekeep yourself from bastards like this. Like, there needs to be a serious return to segregation in society. Because you have to segregate yourself from morons like this. Like, they're justifying this blatant racism by making false equivalences. And if they're making false equivalences about things like this in the game, they're doing it in real life. They're doing it in real life. And why would you want to risk yourself or your children around fucktards like this. But again, we don't have a real season. Like, this is not a real season that we're watching. I mean, I've already highlighted tweets where Kylan, Tiffany, and Xavier all mentioned that they weren't playing their true game. And you even had Kylan say he wants a second chance at it because he's not playing the game for himself this season. And isn't that the point? We're supposed to be watching 16 strangers try to win the grand prize at the end and also the title so they can have some bragging points and then rank themselves on the list of best players. I mean, no matter who wins this season, they won't be able to do that unless Claire pulls off some miracle because Alyssa ain't going to do shit. She's too much of a dingbat. But, maybe Claire will. But I think Claire has proven to be useless as well because she can't even win shit. So much for that super fandom. That's a total waste. I mean, I guess go back to your LARPing survivor because you can't do shit in the house. All someone has to do is put in the threat of being called a racist or a bigot, and you clam up and don't play the game. Claire has been an absolute waste. And she is a prime example of the many other white libtards out there. Complete and utter waste. But again, all of this racist bullshit is only allowed with this six because they know at the end of the day, these six will vote the way they want them to vote. And I'm not talking about in the game of Big Brother. I'm talking about in the game of life. Because as history has shown, and even current day events has shown, if you move out of place, because California, where this Big Brother game is set, a recall is happening, and they show you if you move out of place where they expect you to be, like a Larry Elder, they'll call you every name under the sun. And then they'll use your so-called own to be even more blatantly racist. So that's the only reason why this sick is allowed to be racist, because they know at the end of the day, they own them, mind, body, and soul. Because they're all woke, they're all a bunch of social justice warriors, and they all wave that BLM flag, which is sponsored by a white liberal guy and headed by 3 black feminist lesbians who all date white women. It's an utter joke. So again, this season of Big Brother is a very true reflection of the Big Brother game of life.